Should I buy I bonds now or later? Or should I only buy them in April and October? Or perhaps November? Those were some of the top questions I got after posting this video a few weeks back on my November I bond rate prediction of 12.4%, which I'll be updating as the inflation numbers come out, by the way, so stay tuned. Before we dive in, I wanted to say a quick thank you to Bob Parkey and all of you who have supported this channel via Super Thanks. We appreciate you and we'll be putting these Super Thanks donations towards pushing out even more great content to our Super Saver community. So, the best time to buy I bonds. Generally speaking, there seems to be three main but different perspectives floating around currently on this topic. Perspective 1, those who say, why wait? Just buy now. Perspective 2, those who say, only buy in April and October. And perspective 3, those who say, buy in May and November. Now, I can't tell you what's best or right for you. As I always say, everyone's financial journey is different, and I don't know the specifics of your financial journey. But what I can do is walk you through why we decided to buy I bonds in February, why we didn't wait until April, May, October, or November to buy our I bonds. And what I can also do is explain to you why others might choose to buy I bonds in different months so that you're better able to decide for yourself what's best for you. Perspective 1, why wait? Just buy now. So we, my husband and I, are of this perspective, the why wait perspective. That's why we bought our I bonds in February of this year. We didn't see the need to wait. And had I been able to figure out earlier how much excess cash we had on hand, we would have bought our I bonds even earlier. So that I can explain our why wait perspective in a way that's applicable to the here and now, let's pretend for the purposes of this video that I don't own any I bonds, that I know the current annualized I bond rate is 9.62%, and that I just watched my own video on the November I bond rate prediction of 12.4%. Just work with me here, guys, okay? It'll make the explanation smoother. And let's further assume that my excess cash is sitting in my bank account like it actually was earlier this year, earning me between nothing and a whopping next to nothing. Why would I wait to buy I bonds? That's literally the question I asked myself. Why wouldn't I want to move this excess cash of mine that's sitting in the bank, earning me 0% straight away into something like an I bond that could immediately start earning me an annualized rate of 9.62% for the first 6 months and possibly a projected annualized rate of 12.4% in the second 6 months? 0% or 9.62%, and then later potentially 12.4%. And don't forget that I bonds are, for all practical purposes, risk-free, as they are U.S. government savings bonds that guarantee a return of principal. So again, why wait? If you're new to I bonds, I've included this I bond must-know checklist at the end of the video. It goes through the most important I bond basics, limits, and restrictions that every I bond purchaser must know beforehand. What does excess cash for I bonds mean? Excess cash is literally money that you do not need for the next 12 months because 12 months is the minimum holding period for I bonds. For us, again, it may be different for others, but for us, excess cash for I bonds is not emergency money, nor is it money earmarked for long-term retirement planning accounts such as a 401k, IRA, HSA, or the like. Nor is it money that you can borrow from a bank, credit card company, or your 401k plan. Why? Because I bonds are not designed to make you rich. Sometimes even my husband forgets this when I start predicting double-digit returns, so let this here serve as a reminder to all of us. I bonds are not a wealth building tool. They're a wealth protection tool. I bonds are designed to help super savers like you and like me keep pace with inflation, to protect the purchasing power of those extra dollars that we have in the bank. And that's it. They're not designed to beat out the stock market in the long run. And that's what the data shows. You guys know data tables bring me great joy. So let's take a look at this one. It shows that no matter which decade you started investing in, the S&P 500 would have outpaced inflation every single time in the long haul. This column here shows the year that you would have started investing in the S&P 500. And this column shows how much $1,000 invested in the S&P 500 at that time would have grown to in June of this year, not adjusted for inflation. Here's the S&P 500's average annual rate of return. Again, not adjusted for inflation. Here's the average annual inflation rate. And this column on the far right shows the S&P 500's average annual rate of return adjusted for inflation. As I said earlier, no matter which decade you started investing in, the numbers show that a long-term investor in the S&P 500 would have won out against inflation every time. Sometimes it was a bit more of a winner, like here, and sometimes it was a bit less of a winner, but the winner overall nonetheless. And if you want to check out the data yourself, I've included the link to officialdata.org below this video. So while I-bonds hold a super special place in our heart and our overall portfolio, I'm not sacrificing the long-term wealth building prospects of our other investment and retirement vehicles, nor the liquidity of our emergency fund to buy I-bonds. Our I-bonds have been bought with money that was previously sitting in our bank account, earning fantastically zero rates. Why buy now if I think inflation and I-bond rates will go higher? Let's say, for example, that I thought my favorite stock was going to go up and then keep going up. I wouldn't wait to buy it. I'd buy it as soon as I could so that I could catch it on the way up. So, applying a similar logic, why would I wait to buy my I-bonds if I think their rates are going to keep going up? Buying now, buying earlier doesn't mean that I won't get the higher rates that will come later on. In fact, the sooner we buy our I-bonds, the sooner we get the existing annualized rate of 9.62%. And the sooner we get the next round of higher rates. Here's what I mean. Say that we buy our I-bonds now, in August, and we get this annualized 9.62% rate divided by 2, because it's for 6 months only. And we get it between August 2022 and January 2023. If we assume that rates go higher, like to my November I-bond rate prediction of 12.4%, we'll still get this higher rate divided by 2, and we'll get it between February 2023 and July 2023. Plus, we get this higher rate sooner than someone who waited until, say, September or October to buy. Like this guy who waits until mid-October to buy his I-bonds. This guy also gets the 9.62% rate divided by 2, like we do, but 2 months later, starting in October 2022, instead of in August 2022. And this guy also gets whatever the next higher rate is. In this example, my November I-bond rate prediction of 12.4% divided by 2, just like we do. But again, 2 months later than we do, starting in April 2023 instead of in February 2023. So, from this why wait perspective that I apply to our personal portfolio of I-bonds, if I think rates will go higher, why would I wait like this guy to get the same returns but 2 months later? Which brings me to perspective number 2 of buying I-bonds. Only buy them in April and October. Because there is a difference between us buying in August and this guy who buys in October. While all 3 of us know that we're going to get this 9.62% divided by 2 for the first 6-month holding period, we, my husband and I, don't know what rate we'll get in the second 6-month holding period. Guy, though, if Guy buys in mid-October, he does know with relative certainty what rate he'll get for the second 6-month holding period. And the reason he knows is because the inflation numbers for the previous 6 months that are used to determine the November I-bond rate, they're released by the Bureau of Labor Statistics shortly before mid-October. Now, is there a chance that the Bureau of Labor Statistics fine-tunes the inflation numbers released in mid-October, and as a result, the November I-bond rate also changes? Yeah, it's possible. Here a bit, there a bit. But for the most part, the released inflation numbers in mid-October and mid-April, they seem to be a good indicator of what's to be expected of the I-bond rates that will be announced in November and in May, respectively. So going back to Guy here, who buys mid-October, after the inflation numbers for the previous 6 months have been released, Guy knows pretty much what he'll be earning on his I-bonds for the next 12 months. Whereas Jen and Marcus up here, we don't know. The same concept applies if you substitute October for April, by the way. Mid-April is when the inflation numbers for the previous 6 months are released. And these numbers then drive the May I-bond rate calculation. Here's another table. And my kids did say that I should rename us to Tables or Us. But anyway, here's another table that will hopefully help you better understand the trade-offs between the buy now versus buy in mid-October decision. If you buy now, you start earning the current rate immediately, but you don't know what rate you'll get for the second 6-month holding period. That's the camp I fall into, especially since I'm predicting double-digit I-bond returns. Plus, as an additional bonus for investing early, the interest we start earning immediately while Guy is still waiting will accrue to our principal so that we will get the new higher rate on a larger amount than Guy, who was just waiting. Now, if you fall into Guy's camp, if you buy in mid-October, after the inflation numbers for the previous 6 months are released, you'll get the current rate a few months later, but like Guy in our example, you'll pretty much know what you'll earn for the first 12 months of holding your I-bonds. So, as you can see, there is no right or wrong answer here per se. If starting to earn interest immediately on your excess cash is more important to you, then you may want to buy now. On the other hand, if you're like Guy and knowing with relative certainty what you'll get for the first 12 months is what's most important to you, then you may want to wait to buy in mid-October after the inflation numbers for the previous 6 months are released. And remember, 12 months is the minimum holding period for an I-bond. Plus, you'll lose the last 3 months interest if you redeem your I-bonds in the first 5 years. Right, so those are trade-offs between buy now versus buy in mid-October, mid-April. Now let's talk about perspective 3, buy I-bonds in May and November. Folks that fall into this camp typically believe that the I-bond rate is heading further north and want to time things so that they can get in at the peak or as close to the peak as possible. So let's again take my November I-bond rate prediction of 12.4% to illustrate why one might choose to buy in November. And let's use girl as our example this time. Let's say that girl falls into the perspective 3 camp. Girl wants to buy I-bonds in November because she's wondering, why buy I-bonds at 9.62% now when I can get them at the even higher rate of 12.4% in November, just a few months later? In which case, girl would delay purchasing her I-bonds until November when this new higher rate is announced, and basically ride the peak or peaking I-bond rates downwards until it's no longer worth holding onto her I-bonds anymore, at which point she'd redeem them and lose the last 3 months of lower I-bond rates, assuming she's held her I-bonds for less than 5 years. Here's the thing though, right? Even if we buy now and get the current rate, we still get whatever the next higher November rate is. We just get it in February 2023, 3 months later than girl here, who gets whatever the next higher November rate is in November 2022 when it's announced. In addition, for us, we know that we have this 9.62% divided by 2 in the bag, so to say. And even nicer, the interest accrued during these first 6 months will increase the basis on which we'll be earning the presumably higher these days interest rate from February. Whereas girl here, she doesn't know what she's getting after this November rate ends. As the age-old proverb goes, a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. And listen, some people choose to buy I-bonds a bit every month, like the way one makes contributions to a retirement account. And still others just put money into I-bonds whenever they have the extra cash. This walkthrough today of the decision-making process between buy I-bonds now versus buy I-bonds in October or November is by no means exhaustive. But I do hope it will help you better understand the different schools of thought and ultimately empower you in figuring out what works best for you. And be sure to check out my November I-bond rate prediction of 12.4% here if you're interested in seeing what might be forthcoming in the I-bond horizon. This video also goes through how the inflation numbers released in October and April are used to calculate the respective upcoming November and May I-bond rates. Also, as promised to those of you relatively new to I-bonds, here's my I-bond must-know checklist with the most important I-bond basics, limits, and restrictions that every I-bond purchaser should know beforehand. If you're ready to dive into your first I-bond after going through this checklist, then take a look at this video tutorial here on how to set up your Treasury Direct account and buy your first I-bond. Okay, super savers, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget that thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another money-saving, wealth-building video.